The Oklahoma City Thunder are the young team of this season. We have a handful of teams that are exceeding expectations. Teams like Minnesota that are really good. Anthony Edwards is really good. But of course, they have, guys like Rudy Gobert, some other veterans. Amongst teams that rely almost entirely on young players, Oklahoma City is the team of the season. And the conversation around them has mostly revolved around, do they need to make a move? Do they need to make a trade? But at this point, I'm starting to wonder if, one, they don't even need to make a trade during the year this year, and two, if they are real players in the contender race in the Western Conference. Now, we talked about the Thunder before the season on multiple different channels that I have, and the big X factor for them was always going to be Chet Holmgren because they had plenty of perimeter talent. Obviously, Jalen Williams was awesome last year to, start his rookie season. SGA, Giddey still trying to grow as an offensive player. They had plenty of pieces on the perimeter offensively. The thing that they missed all of last year when they were still pretty good, as well as in years prior, was some kind of presence in the front court, whether it be as a scorer, whether it be as a defender. And obviously Chet wasn't going to be this dominant physical presence in the front court. But what we talked about before the year was he could be a top level connector for this team. Maybe not this early. He has exceeded expectations in terms of how quickly he's gotten there. But we talked about the possibility of him being able to space the floor, being able to do some stuff in the ball screen action where he's, getting the ball in the middle of the floor and creating a little bit there. Defensively, his instincts there. And he has basically showed up and played at almost an all-star level. I don't think he's going to make the all-star team, but borderline on that level. One of the league leaders in blocks, shoots threes well, and is just everywhere on the floor. And his ability to not only contribute, but to do it immediately is the thing that has changed the ceiling formula for this season for Oklahoma City. Because again, we knew Jalen Williams was going to be good. We knew SGA was going to be good. We knew that they were going to have spacing and a really good coach, but the front court presence was what they were going to be missing. And Chet not only has answered a lot of questions for them, but also has presented a really unique opportunity in terms of what this team could look like into the future. And I cannot say enough about how impressive he has been, especially relative to some of the other guys in his draft class. Obviously, he didn't play at all last year due to injury, so he's going to be a little bit more impressive as a rookie, quote unquote, presumably. But this doesn't happen. Like, guys don't just step in as rookies and become elite, high-level connecting pieces on a team that's really, really good. Like, that just doesn't happen. His impact level immediately has been unbelievable. And I think that's the spot where a lot of people have pointed to maybe Oklahoma City needs to make a move. I've talked before about the possibility of trading away Josh Giddey as well, kind of to get another front court player alongside Chet Holmgren. They certainly need more size in the front court. For example, they just beat Denver, but like, for example, in certain matchups against guys like Jokic and this and that, it's going to be a problem for them if they don't have someone with a little bit more size. I've talked about Isaiah Stewart from Detroit as being a really good option for Oklahoma City as a guy that can shoot, provides them size and rebounding, and is on a cost-controlled contract, because that's another thing with this group in the future is they're going to have a ton of young max contract guys, and it's going to be really expensive quickly. So I've talked about someone like Isaiah Stewart for this team. That, to me, is the point that we're looking at for them in terms of in-season upgrades, is getting someone with a little bit more size just as like a matchup option in the front court that also plays well alongside Chet. I've talked about the possibility of someone like Lauri Markkanen, but like, their offense is fine. SGA's dropping 40 on certain nights. They've got plenty of shooting, spacing. Jalen Williams looks like he's going to be a future all-star. They're good on that. So I've kind of cooled off on that idea, even though I think it would be really cool and make a lot of sense for them. Right now, if you're talking about an in-season trade, I wouldn't mind if they moved Giddey for something, but realistically, they're probably going to keep him until the offseason and then evaluate that, because I still have questions about his fit alongside SGA. And then, of course, bringing in someone in the front court, as I mentioned. But really what I've landed on for Oklahoma City is two things. One, when you're playing this well and you're a young team and the chemistry and the vibes are all there, it's kind of like how Orlando was at the beginning of the season, where I wouldn't want to mess that up. Like, yeah, you can look at the situation and say, hey, in Oklahoma City's case, if we make a move, we might be a contender this year. Like, we might actually matter within the race for, the top of the Western Conference. And that can be a really exciting possibility. But when your team is playing so well with all these young guys, I would certainly hesitate to mess with that, to screw up the rotation, to trade guys away that maybe are playing really well for you. I would hesitate to do that, even though it's clear that they do need a little bit more help, certainly in the front court. But the other part of that is they're so talented and they're so good and they play so well together and everybody's role just fits perfectly that I don't think it's crazy to think that OKC could make the conference finals this year with the roster that they have. Like, they're that good. Obviously, it's not a guarantee. The West is loaded, but I don't don't think they need to make a trade to be a conference finals team. I don't think they're on the level yet of like winning the title this year with this team, but I think they could make the conference finals and not make a move. And that is an unbelievable thing to say about a team that has as many assets as Oklahoma City does moving into the future. And that's where this conversation lands, is as much as I like this team, as much as I like how well they play together, a trade almost has to happen for them at some point. And you have to figure out what is the final piece. Because I think they're officially in like final piece territory. What's the thing that we can add to this team that puts us over the top, that puts us on the level of these top tier contending teams? And it's hard to figure out what that is, right? Because I still think that if they get to the offseason and they can trade Giddey for someone either in the front court or the back court that fits really well with the guys that they have, I think that's the move. Giddey is fine. I'm sure that he'll end up being, a decent player on another team, but just I don't like the fit between him and SGA, and too often they play better when it's just SGA and some shooting rather than SGA and Giddey on the floor together as they are to start games. And of course, they have all of these assets. Like when I say they have to make a trade, it is partially because of the roster, because they need a couple of other things, but it's also because they can't keep all of these picks. Like they can keep kicking them down the road and get more and more future picks and not actually use them in the draft. But like when you have as many picks as OKC does, at some point you have to use them for something. Like otherwise you're just going to end up cutting first round picks every year off the team because you don't have roster spots. So that's what I mean when I say they have to make a trade. But I think right now, if you just put me in charge of Oklahoma City right now, I would kind of, look at the Josh Giddey situation, see if there's a team out there that maybe wants him. If not, I would just chill. I'd try and get someone like Isaiah Stewart, maybe try and add a little bit more size in the front court. And that's about it. Like I would just wait. I would wait past the trade deadline. I would see what this team looks like in the postseason and then evaluate my roster in the offseason and look for that final piece. But when you have a team like this that's young, that's growing, that is just unbelievably talented, I don't think it makes sense to make a move like that in the middle of the year. Like keep this group, keep this feeling going, and then see what you have in the offseason in terms of the final piece of the puzzle. And maybe you could say that in that scenario, you're like wasting a season in which they maybe could have actually been a contender. That's a fine argument if you want to make it, but if it was me, I'd wait past the trade deadline, evaluate things in the offseason. But the bottom line is, it's unbelievable how good this team is as quickly as they have gotten really, really good. One, I think it really, really helps that they they absolutely nailed the coach. Like the coach has been good for a couple of years, and people just haven't noticed because they've intentionally lost games in the second half of the season. But in the first half of the year, they're always good, or at least 500, and then they fall off in the second half of the year on purpose. Obviously, SGA has developed into a wonderful player. The Jalen Williams pick from last year, it just continues to like dumbfound me how good he is and how quickly he has gotten to that point. And then, of course, Chet's development as well. And that's the thing, that it's not that I didn't anticipate what Chet would become. I didn't anticipate the timeline on which he would become the guy that he has. So bottom line is, OKC, I've watched a ton of them this year. They're one of my favorite teams in the league to watch. And not only are they the team of the future, but they might be the team of the present a little bit quicker than we all realized.